Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Business Barbershop Podcast. I am Chris.
I'm Keen.
And we are back with another episode. It is February 27th, 2024. Not that that really matters.
It does matter because that means you are now an unavailable dude.
Oh, yeah. I'm officially hitched.
Yep.
So we, Brooke and I got married just about 10 days ago.
It feels like yesterday.
It does. Keen was there. It was a blast. It was
my first destination wedding, by the way.
Was it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Everything actually, the entire thing went off without a single hitch. The travel for us to and from was super easy. The resort, I wish you guys would have stayed at the resort, but the resort was super fun. The service was awesome.
We obviously didn't do our research. Our vacation club, it's fucking timeshare. Vacation club, we used John's, which is right in town, but we had one, and when we were leaving a resort, I could see the one right next to it was like, it said it was like a Dreams, whatever. That's part of our whatever. We could have used some of ours nights instead. Yep.
So it was a blast. We did the sunset cruise. That was super fun with everybody.
Which I'm sorry I did not make that.
Oh yeah, that's right. You were out.
Yeah, I was like a Pepto-Bismol commercial.
Yeah.
Upset stomach, diarrhea.
Do you remember Moses in his speech when he was talking about having upset stomach?
Yeah.
When he got back to the United States, you know what he had? Appendicitis.
Shut the front door.
Uh-huh.
He did not look good.
So they didn't have to take it out, but he had appendicitis. And so it was inflamed or whatever, and they had to give him a whole bunch of stuff.
They almost removed my appendix. I had that when I had that little episode with those oysters.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They thought they might.
I told them, just take that thing out, man. You don't need it. You don't need that thing. So anyway, everybody survived, so that was good. Everybody made it to the ceremony.
I didn't realize that he had moved.
Yep.
I was like, oh yeah, hey, there you are.
Yep.
Hadn't seen you since just walking to see you in the office. I didn't realize that he wasn't.
Like a week before school started, they just decided they were moving to try it out. I mean, because they already had a house down there.
Yeah. And
so they just really like it down there and wanted to.
I wish Diane would take those women's school decisions with me that way. I've tried to talk her into stuff like that.
Yep.
For me, it's a big deal. Like, hey, why don't we just move into one of the houses on our rental spot? No.
Oh, really?
No.
Yeah.
Won't do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but his practice. He's a CPA. His practice is very mobile.
Yeah.
Very virtual. I mean, and
right.
he still has people that work here and come into the office and stuff. But yeah, so it was great. And now we're hitched. I'm off the market officially.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. So I'm super pumped about that. And then we followed that up, which is we were going to talk about today. Was with a trip to Phoenix. So we got into town from Cabo on Tuesday and went to Phoenix on Saturday, this last weekend. It's part of our sort of real estate investment journey.
Yeah.
We did and so I thought it'd be fun to kind of talk a little bit about that, what I've found, and you don't even know what I found yet, and kind of what we're going to be doing moving forward, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we took even up to going to Cabo and everything, we were kind of looking at a bunch of properties to kind of rehash for everybody. My idea was to really kind of find a property in Phoenix, which is very sort of Airbnb friendly, that we could go and visit whenever we wanted to, and then sort of, utilize as a short-term rental asset on the side, or sort of really as a main component, and then we could use it when we wanted to.
Right.
And there are, lots of options. And, I got this. So what I usually do when I'm curious about these things is I start Googling, researching, watched a ton of YouTube videos from people that are, seem like they're in the business, and they're
Robinson's, Sean Radovich or whatever his name is.
Yeah, I can't remember who I watched. Robuilt, I think, a guy named Robuilt. Anyway,
there's also a pretty good podcast.
Yeah.
That I listen to.
Yeah, so dove into a bunch of that, and through that I got some STR kind of pro formas, where you plug in the numbers and it will kind of shoot out what your profit kind of looks like and stuff like that. And with property values where they are and interest rates where they are, making the numbers work is really, really difficult.
It is hard. Making deals
And-
work in high rate markets are really tough, especially at high price points.
And
Now like full circle.
Yep.
Remember our Burfer episode? Now it makes sense, right? Because you buy it expensive, you dump a valuable part of the asset. It deleverages your amount you owe by the sale price of that unit, and then for your little money in, you owe a lot less on what's retained, and then
Yep.
you try to make that part work.
The hard thing though was even the ones that we could add some value to, they were still expensive, so the capital outlay is still like, I mean, not crazy, but still, enough.
It's hard to let capital be the solution in a high rate market. It
Yeah.
doesn't move the needle as much as you want it to.
Yeah.
Obviously, with rates being higher, it does move the payment more, but you're trying to close a very wide margin.
Yep. And the advantage of being in a STR friendly area is that you really have a lot of confidence that you're going to be able to do that for a long time. The disadvantage is there's 100 STRs
Yes.
all over the place. You
Yeah.
know, so the competition is high, which means your opportunity to sort of fill your rental is lower.
Yeah. So yes, there's that. I think that there's two ways to try to succeed in that space, knowing that's when there's some cities are friendly, some cities aren't. When some cities aren't, there's sometimes loopholes that can make it work. So, for instance, City of Kirkland has a pretty strict short-term rental code. They don't enforce really hard though, but if it's a multifamily zone or it's condos, they kind of just leave those alone. But if it's a single-family home, it's got to be your primary residence. You have to be occupying it for a certain amount of days of the year to be able to STR it, and you're capped on how many days of the year you can do it, right? Or it's how many days you have to be occupying it to be able to do it. So it's common, like if someone lives in downtown Kirkland, they have like an ADU above their garage, that will be their Airbnb.
Yep.
But like when I see people renting out like a big house like on the lake, like if I want to, I could just be like, ding, like figure out where it is and hate on them, and then like code enforcement would stop them, right?
Yep.
So one is to find a hack. So obviously, in our market, we have this whole like ADU movement. So when I buy a house and I condo it with the ADUs, now it's a condominium project, and now it falls into that non-single family category. And then if the HOA allows for it, which of course it does because I'm designing the HOA, then I'm allowed to STR it. So that was kind of my hack. But Kirkland's not a great STR market anyways. Like,
Right.
Doing that just makes it so it's legal. The other thing, so there's that kind of a thing. Or like some cities will have like specific zoning or a certain amount of licenses they'll issue. And so if you can get in on one of the people that have licenses, kind of like the cannabis businesses, or if you're in a specific zoning that allows for it, and that's like Bellingham up by the college, Western.
Yep.
Then focus on the areas that have that zoning. And surprisingly, a lot of people don't pay attention to that zoning like they should. But one thing that's for sure true, which is the second part, which would apply to yours, which I think everyone should do anyways, is strength of competition, right? Like I think that all businesses should be treated as if there's unlimited options for customers. And so what are you going to do to make it stand out? One of the things I would tell you that you should look into is is the same guys who created this software called IntelliHost. They created this STR business where they have, I think, about a dozen or so, high-end, unique short-term rentals. And the name of the company they created for those short-term rentals is called Loma Homes, Loma Homes.
You told me that last time.
Yeah. And, as an example, they have some short-term rental houses in Orlando because some people don't want to stay in a hotel. They want to stay in a house, and then they take their kids to Disney World, right?
Yep.
Well, imagine how many fucking houses there are in Orlando for short-term rent, right? But when you see theirs, you're like, oh, well, this is not a normal short-term rental, right? And they just really invest into a unique experience. We've tried to take a page from that book on ours. They're not as extreme as theirs.
Yeah.
But we definitely want there to be a pop. We want there to be
You need some uniqueness about it.
I mean, I was up till almost midnight last night actually updating my Airbnbs because I realized that, because I use the IntelliHost software. So free endorsement. I am not a paid person for the software. I just heard about it and I pay for it.
Yep.
IntelliHost is a software program where it basically says like it tracks your short-term rentals and it sees how well it performs at 4 different stages: first page impressions, first page impressions, clicks, and bookings. So what happens is like, are you getting a lot of
Right.
impressions, first page impressions? If you're not, then there's something wrong with it. The listing, the whatever, and then at each of the stage
Yeah.
you can critique how your listing is.
There's 4 stages of selling, basically, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And it will and what it does is it has this default template of like, if yours is performing below the average for your market at one of those 4 filters, right? They call it the funnel, their funnel process. Then it'll give a series of recommendations that typically improve your STR at that stage of the funnel.
Yep.
And the problem is that because once you make those changes, you have to kind of like ignore it for like a whole month.
Right. You have to get data.
Yeah, to get the data to see what worked, what didn't work. And they recommend you don't do too many at the same time.
Yep.
I did do a handful of them because it was just kind of like these obvious ones I could just know we should have done. We should have had, like, our competition had more photos. We should do it. We didn't have captions. We should add captions to our photos. And then I was talking to Diane. It was just things that I think every STR owner should just do from the get-go, that we were kind of like, oh, yeah, we launched too many too fast. We kind of skipped over some stuff.
Yep.
We relied too heavily just on our design and nice photos. And so, and what's worse is that even though we relied heavily on our design and nice photos, we still were way less photos than our competition. So it's like, if we were going to go the direction of design, then we should get more of our photos on there, right?
Yep.
But also, they really try to sell up like local businesses and restaurants and whatever. It's funny is I was doing that last night and like putting pictures of them up there. And so I was Googling what was near my short-term rentals, and I found places and activities that I didn't even fucking know existed, right?
Yep.
So, man, like after I put together my Juanita Kirkland one, I'm like, fuck, I want to stay there now. Like for real, like there's some. So for instance, you live in Kirkland, so you may have gone there before, but there's a really famous French restaurant there called Cafe Juanita.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been there.
Yeah.
And I knew that, so I made sure I put that in there. But I said, okay, well, I got to find something else because I can't just be all Cafe Juanita. And so there's a state park that's in Kenmore, just north of where I went, St. Edward's Park.
Yep.
And there's trails.
There's a restaurant in there too.
There's a restaurant. There's a bar, and it looks fucking legit.
Yeah, it's brand new.
It looks fucking.
I mean, it's not like in the last year, maybe.
Yeah, so
2 years.
the building's
Very
been there
new.
for a long time, but they just restored it, saved it, and made it to a lodge, plus all that stuff. And I'm like, man, our property is really close to that. So, we'll find out whether or not it changes our bookings. But it almost kind of sold me like if I'm so used to the downtown Kirkland experience, which is great.
Yep.
I'm not going to try to take away from that. I mean, downtown Kirkland is downtown Kirkland.
Yep.
But I've gone to downtown Kirkland so many times now that I'm like, I actually would rather stay at my place and go to those 2 other places because I've never been there before.
Just try something new.
Yeah, just try something new, especially if it's a summertime. And because look, at that spot, there's kind of like 2 different beach parks you go to then, right? There's the Juanita Beach Park. There's a St. Edward Beach Park that's on St. Edwards, plus also Cafe Juanita, and then also that restaurant bar that's inside the lodge. Who knows how good it is, but it actually, the bar inside that lodge is like super legit.
Yeah.
But, I digress. The point is that like that research that you do helps you kind of highlight your listings, and I would definitely recommend that you kind of take the time to think about it. Try to slow down and really try to sell up. Every one of these should be treated a little bit like a startup business.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as much work as starting a restaurant, but pretend it is.
Yeah.
And it'll end up being a fraction of the work, but you do need that. But if you just lazily just try to throw up as a short-term rental, it might kind of work, because of just pure supply and demand. But pure supply and demand is kind of like you have that very mediocre restaurant on a really busy road in a popular tourist town, and you will just get some anyways because of foot traffic and location.
Right.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't try to be the best of what you do in that area. You always should try. And that's why I think the Loma Home guys do a good job with that.
Yes. Well, and all the things that you have just said are the reason why I'm doing something different.
Okay.
Because look, we have talked about this many times.
Yes.
When it comes to this kind of stuff, I want to be lazy about it.
Yeah.
That's not okay. That doesn't mean if I would get a property, I would do all of those things that you just talked about. But I want it to be easy.
Right.
I want the process of acquiring the property to be relatively straightforward.
Right.
I don't want to have to, after on our flight home, I was texting Keen. I was like, there's this one that had like this basically apartment on top of this house. And I was like, I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to try to spin my way into doing something.
Right.
Does that make sense? I want the numbers to be simple, and then you make you go over and above with everything else.
Or if there is a spin, it's a repeatable spin that's easy. Like it's like here's a spin process where it's like you buy the property, you do this that someone else didn't see, and then it becomes this.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's versions of that do exist.
Yes.
Right. But that kind of real estate hack requires you to be a version of a small developer. Right.
I don't have the time for that, and or the expertise, really, to be honest with it. Right. So I don't.
Or
have either
if
one.
you don't have the expertise, someone needs to hand it to you on a silver platter and be like, this is what works. Here's how you make it work. Here's how you do it.
100%. So and the other thing too is when you know, I would encourage everyone, if you are doing things like this, to there are a bunch of templates out there where you can plug numbers in and you can see what the projections are, and we were like at least minus 25, 35, $4,500 like a month.
Yeah.
Because with interest rates so high, with what I want to put down, you're just trying to cover a lot, you know?
Well, here's a delayed. So here is a delayed gratification way that I'll tell you that you could make this still happen, but it would take some time. Okay. But it would make the numbers work for sure. And this is my plan. I'm not saying this is the best plan. Someone else might have another plan. But I for sure don't want vacation rentals only in Seattle. Are you fucking kidding me? I already live here. Like that's the stupidest thing.
Yep.
I have vacation rentals all over Seattle, and I fucking live in the Seattle area. Why do I do that? Here's why. Because I know how to invest here. Because I know how to create value here. I know how to do a BRRRR deal, so I can get the money I put into a deal back out and have it cash flow. So then the property is creating equity, it's appreciating, you're paying down the balance, and it's positive cash flowing in a high value market. So if I have 20, 30 rentals like that, where I was able to pull my invested capital back out and they still cash flow and they're building equity, what happens 5, 10 years down the road? They all are a great 1031 asset. So
Correct.
Let's say I said, and I haven't for sure chosen Phoenix as one of them, but it's higher on the list than Orlando. But I do know I want a home that is in a sunny place near a Mayo Clinic. And that means there's only 2 cities for that. There's Orlando and then there's Scottsdale/Phoenix, right? Because the other Mayo Clinic's in Minnesota. I mean, that's the best one, but I don't want to fucking go to Minnesota. Right. I got to be really sick to fly me to Minnesota. I'll just fucking fly there.
Yes.
But it'd be cool to get like second, third best options in a sunny place. So, and I think Phoenix is a little higher ranking than me than Orlando. For me, if I'm going to get a place in Florida, it probably is more like South Florida.
Yep.
But my point is that like we're in an area that our value is so high that even though we can be afraid of the value growth that's going to happen in Florida or Arizona, if our values here are relatively same or higher in a comparable market, then that means as long as we get similar appreciation, you can build up your down payment and trade into that asset. And so then you can imagine like, okay, as that asset you want to buy keeps going up in value, so does the one that you're going to trade in from.
Yep.
And then once rates come down, and if it's a trade, it doesn't really matter if you do it now or later, right? Because they're both going to go up or down if there's similar market growth, right? And real estate, every area moves a little bit differently. But as a whole, if you're investing in a good market and you're trying to buy in a good market, you're just trading margins.
Yep.
So if you can imagine, like, okay, I have $1 million asset here. I want to buy $1 million asset there. Maybe over the next 10 years, the average growth is slightly off, but it's similar, right? Then if I'm building equity both by the growth, which is almost a wash to the property I'm buying, but also paying down the debt balance, then once rates drop, I could just do a trade.
Yep. You jump my gun. You jump my gun.
Yeah.
You jump my gun.
Oh, so is that what you're thinking?
Yes, in a way. So
that trust me, I don't want all these Seattle rentals down the road. What would I do with all of them?
Right. So what Brooke and I started calling this is like phase 4.
Okay.
Would be this part. And the good news, well, I don't know. And so you're right. That's my sort of thought process, because in the meantime, I'm thinking, look, why would I be out of pocket let's say it's $2,500 a month, okay, which is not unreasonable in this, like, it's just not unreasonable.
It's not unreasonable
with taxes, with the price of the real estate, with everything. Like, it could easily be just out of pocket $2,500 a month. I mean, we can literally just go down there and spend a weekend anytime that we want.
Yeah.
And it's not, it might cost us $2,500 each time. We do that a couple times. It's fine.
Right.
Not the same. And I can find a way to expense it probably, so you're saving, it's not free, but it's cheaper.
Right.
So instead, and you know what I like to do, I want to buy cheap houses that rent consistently and are easy, are simple. And I'm not necessarily afraid of buying property not here. So what I haven't talked to him about it yet, but I reached out to Tim.
Okay.
Because he's talking about all these deals.
Dayton, Ohio. I actually just texted him a market. I said, hey, have you, I didn't have my phone on me, but I said, have you ever looked into Omaha, Nebraska?
Yeah.
And he's like, no. Is there Air Force Base there? I'm like, yeah. It's like not the biggest. It's like top 20 largest Air Force bases. But when I asked ChatGPT, what are the top 20 largest Air Force bases by population? Nice. I said, okay, out of those 20 cities, which one has the highest residential rental cap rate? And it gave me that city. And nice. So I said, okay. Yeah. And what's funny, and here's the easiest part. The closest residential city near that military base, which I can't remember what it's called. It starts with an O. It's got a weird name. But the closest city to it between Omaha and the base is a city called Bellevue, Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, well, fucking Bellevue. Like, we know
I know Bellevue, Nebraska. I've been there before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was it. Like, Bellevue, Nebraska was it. And I looked, and sure enough, it met the 1% rule easily, you know, that it looked like, what things sold for and what they rent for.
Yeah.
Definitely meet that requirement.
See, so he's a dude that I trust, right? Because he, just from talking to him, but obviously, he's, you know him well. And I know he's finding these deals all the time. And I just wanted to be like, hey, if you find something that is good, but you don't want it, just tell me.
Yep.
Like, I'll just buy it.
Yep.
Because it's not, the price points are low.
Mm-hmm.
So the risk is relatively low.
Yep.
I know that he knows what he's doing.
Yep.
And I'll even, I'm like, look, I'll throw you some cash for doing the work or whatever. I don't know how that.
He and I already talked. We got it all.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I don't know how that works exactly, but I would be willing to pay you for that for sure.
It's already. He and I were already talking about it because I'm licensed in high value areas. He's licensed where I do value adds. He's licensed in lower value, high cap rate areas, and so we talked about, hey, I'll help you figure out how to create your capital, and then you help me trade into the higher cash flow.
Yeah.
And so when I do loans in those states, I just will filter it through his branch, and then vice versa. So when the loan will just fund through his branch, and then he'll get paid for it that way.
Yep. So I'm emailed him and I was like, hey, can we chat about this thing? So maybe there's opportunities there, and then I'll just do that for a while, you know. And
well, you could do that, but I think here's what I would recommend. Remember, what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a large equity position. So you're thinking, okay, if I get enough of those, I can offset the negative cash flow. I think you should do a little bit of both. If you get 100% BRRRR deal, where you get all the money you put into it back out, and it cash flows in Western Washington, it'll create hundreds of thousands of equity, and that could be your trading asset. And then you should always be building up those long-term cash flow plays too. I think you should do both.
I know, but that's too much work.
It is, but it's
my BRRRR is in my business. My upside.
You are focusing on your business growth.
My upside for my business is unlimited. I can double my business every year if I wanted to.
Dude, just pay me and I'll do it for you.
And well, I know, but I don't have that. I'm the cash is going kind of into the business. It's like
I'll show you a cheap one here.
Look, you keep. I'm not.
I won't show you any Seattle East Side ones.
I'm not against it. I mean, you keep showing me stuff. If something works,
I'll show you a Kitsap or Pierce County BRRRR that you might go into it for like 100, and you'll get your 100 back out in like 3 to 4 months later, and then it'll cash flow.
I would do that. Yes, I'm not against that. But for me, I just really want to do as little work as possible, and I know with that criteria, it limits some of the upside.
Right.
But I'm okay with that, because I don't have the time to, or I just don't have
I don't disagree with that.
Bandwidth for that,
because you've been an attorney for how long?
This is my 19th year of practice.
19th year, but you've been focusing on estate planning for how long?
6. This is my 7th year, I think.
So you're still very heavily in like growth mode.
Yeah, and I'm not even doing any meetings anymore. Yeah. So my team is just I am just growing the business.
That's a newer revelation.
Yeah,
right? Mm-hmm.
It's been like a couple months, 3 months.
You're 100% right. I mean, look, the number one investment you always will make will be in yourself, and number 2 is in your own direct business, right? But there's a point, and this is where I stress it. There's a point where you'll start getting diminishing returns in that space, unless it's true with all businesses.
Right.
Some people say, well, no, some businesses grow to huge levels. Yes, but even Microsoft is a blue chip stock now, right? Like
right.
when they came up with Xbox and said, look, we're going to be a top 2 competitor in the console space. How much did it change the value of their company? It's still marginal because they're a cash cow,
right.
and they're already so huge. This is one of the things that Warren Buffett talks about. He can't get the kind of returns he used to because he can go find a company he can buy for like $50 million, make it worth $300 million, and a 200 and that's a 500% value return on that investment. But what $250 million means to Berkshire is so little,
right.
it barely moves the value of their stock.
Yep.
Right. And so every business has a critical mass point. And so I think there's 2 lessons to be learned here. Number one, the best investment is always in yourself, right? Who you are, what you know, what you believe, your character, your beliefs, your philosophy, the knowledge, like that's number 1 investment, which translates into all the other places. But the number 2 investment that gives you a financial return is in your business until you get to critical mass. See, I focus so much on my mortgage business that I took that too much to heart. And even my coach was telling me, just focus on your business and invest your money in the stock market. Yep. But there's some people who are just capable of taking certain things further than others. One thing I realized as a loan officer and as a branch manager is I wish I could tell you that I'm going to be like a Coach K leader. I'm not. I just don't have the temperament for it. Can I get better at it? I work on it every day.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to be Coach K. Like that's just some people are meant for leadership.
Yeah.
That ain't me. And for me to try to force myself to be someone I'm not isn't as fitting. I'm really, really intelligent when it comes to like complex ideas and so forth, but it doesn't necessarily mean it turns into more loan production. It helps me get loan production, but there's some people who are just going to be more clever, more bare salesy, more charming, and just and those things have their own versions of value in that space. And there's a ceiling. I'll see people. I can get to these high levels of production, but there's certain people who get to these different levels, and a lot of them are close friends of mine. And I look at them, and I'm like, it doesn't matter how hard I try, I can't get there.
Right.
And I did try, and I got as close as I could.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. We're still talking about a great income, right?
Yes.
Great income. But when I would be like, look, I'm stretching to make $1 million a year, these guys are just making $4 or $5 million a year, right?
Yeah.
And I just realized that I'm just not meant to be that guy in this space. But once I kind of hit my own critical mass, well, my complex scenario intelligence works well for real estate development. That charm that they're doing you can't charm a planner into giving you permits.
Right.
So that same skill set that made me a good loan officer up to a certain level, but it has a cap to it, has a different ceiling in a different space because my own business kind of hit its critical mass. And so the best thing I would say to that is, yes, your main business and your revenue that you're going to focus on is your number 2 investment in terms of like a revenue return. But all business ideas will hit a critical mass. And when that happens, that's when you want to start learning how to be a great investor. And for people like Warren, they were 2 in the same, right?
Yeah.
Being a great investor and being great at business kind of were the same thing because he was, he ran a fund and all that good stuff. So, but yeah, I agree with all those things. I think that you could have stumbled into a vacation rental during COVID, lock in a low rate, give off 25% to some property manager, and it could have worked.
Yeah.
And that window is passed, and there's different ways to revisit that. But a lot of people would look at that and say, oh, well, I'm never going to get that time again. Yeah, but
I think the opportunity will be there in the future, but I feel like right now
it'll come in different ways.
I'm trying to pound like a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
I don't want to try to massage things or hope things, or I just don't want to. I want it to be easy, and I would rather in the future just be able to go buy something like we talked about,
right?
Phase 4 or whatever,
right?
And just be cool with it, because that time will be there as well,
right?
And in the meantime, we can still just take a trip. It's not even $2,500 to go to Phoenix for a weekend. It's $1,000 maybe. I mean,
right.
It's not expensive, So
right.
So those type of things are doable. And in the meantime, we can do this other stuff, But for me, what I'm trying to do right now is my business is nowhere near critical mass, but the way that I'm growing it doesn't require all of my cash all of the time. Like I like to take some chips off the table while I'm still building, because I want this, because it's a service-based business. So if it's bad service, it's bad business. So I'm trying to grow and maintain great service, which means it doesn't go super fast, but there's a lot of opportunity there. But I still have this cash.
Yeah, I think that know when you do have the bandwidth for it, it's when you find yourself fading into a hobby. Like that's when I knew it was time for me.
Yeah.
I was getting too deep into watches. I did this before. I did this before with other things, right?
Yep.
And to me it was like, hey, why is this happening? Oh, because I'm getting bored.
Right. Yep.
And I can make myself unbored in my mortgage business really fast, but I know exactly what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I wasn't interested in revisiting that. I think that for me, some people might say I'm copping out on my mortgage upside for my business, but it's actually the exact opposite. The principles that allowed me to grow so big so fast, which was 2009 through 2000, and I'd say 2009 to 2015 were like this run I went on where I was just one of the top producers in my whole state, right? Was based off this principle that I was going to be. I mean, think about the time frame I did this. I did it right in the middle of the Great Recession, and my idea is to try to make my business more like how high-level healthcare was. Take sales out, high-level expertise, high-level customer service, high level of bedside manner and care, and the absolute highest integrity and advice that you could give someone, right? And it was just what I believed I would want if I were on the other side of things. And that what my business grew into based off production was getting away from that.
Yeah.
To scale it bigger, I tried to figure out how to scale that bigger with keeping that in mind, and it itself hit its own critical mass. So I had to wind it back and say, okay, if this is not what I would want to be a customer of, and that's what that principle got me to where I'm at, how much far outside of alignment with my principles can I be before I'm like, I don't enjoy this anymore?
Right.
Or it would eventually just not even last anyways because of that. So I kind of rewound it back. So, okay, like I know what it looks like at a certain production level, but let me get it back to the point of what got me here to begin with, and then try to pause it in that space. Just be the person I would want servicing me on the other side of things. And whatever that's going to be, let it be that. It's enough.
Yep.
And that freedom of that also comes from the fact that, I did have more free time in this investor world that basically could help me reach my financial goals, even though my income was going to get capped in that space. And so, if you find yourself starting to fade, playing a little bit extra golf, or, then that might be a sign that, it's time to take a hobby, and that's when I would recommend take a profitable one.
Yeah. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. This is me just learning how to do this stuff.
I know. When I said that, like last night, I was messing around with my listings last night. I didn't have to be doing that.
Yeah.
I could just delegate it to my property manager. We just got those programs a little while ago, and she for sure could have helped with it. But it's the same process I would have done reading about a new watch that was coming out.
Yep.
Or there's times where my mind just wanders, and it needs to be productive.
Yeah.
Right. And there's not enough new loan guidelines or whatever that I could read that would fill that cup.
Yeah.
And so I had to find a productive cup to put it in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're developing in another area of expertise. You want to get your hands dirty a little bit, because it also helps when you're dealing with your property management folks to be like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I know enough about this to be dangerous, and what you're doing is dumb. You know what I'm saying? Like,
speaking of, I'm really surprised. I think that most of the STR managers out there who claim to be managers, it's too new of a space for them to be authentic experts.
Yeah.
There's so many options. Like, how many macro factors of how you manage a long-term rental is necessary to be a good long-term manager? Comps, screening, maintenance, repairs. It's kind of it.
Yep.
Like, how many factors go into short-term rentals? Design, pricing, short-term stays, what they call orphan stays, which I fill those gaps, dynamic pricing, adjusting your listing, comparing your competition, adding features that would help get more bookings like EV chargers or hot tubs. Like they're really, I mean, I've been at this thing for a year and a half. And mind you, these are properties I already owned, locked in at low rates. So my risk factor of trying it is very, very low, right? And I only need to make as much as a regular rent to break even, right? And so am I making more than regular rent? Yes. Am I, in that sense, has it been successful? Yes. Does it mean I'm a successful STR host? Hell fucking no. Hell no, right? There's so much room for improvement. So I think you're making the right decision because, you know, I won't talk people out of it because I do think that when, like, for whatever the personal reasons are, people need a motivation. And for whatever reason, when I bring up the idea of being a landlord to some people, and I think you're coming from the exact opposite camp, which is the correct mindset. A lot of people are like, I don't know if I want to deal with a regular rental. They picture some kind of like weird management process of a long-term rental, which is actually hilarious because it's so low.
It is.
But then I say, well, what about an Airbnb house? They go, oh, well, that's interesting. I might want to do that. And I'm like, you don't even know how much more work that is.
Gosh, for
but
sure.
if that puts a sparkle in your eye, I'm not going to tell you no.
Yeah.
Right?
I think Airbnb has this quality of like owning a restaurant. You know, it's like more, it's more individual.
Yep.
You know?
And you
like,
can put your little touch into it.
Yeah.
No question. Which is one of the reasons why I like it. So
no, it is. No, there. I mean, yeah, there is definitely something appealing about that, but it is a lot more work. I think I just also being in the customer service industry, space, that there's so much more that goes into it than just having a cool house. Like just processes and things that you have running on the back end, the experience that people have when they walk in the door, making sure that things are in the right places, like all that stuff is, you have to make it happen.
Right.
And you have to think about it or it's going to be a little bit of a shit show, or you have to have somebody that's in charge of that, thinking of that for you. But if you're not thinking of it, then the chances that it doesn't get done right are high.
That's correct.
Because as good as some property management team is going to be, you're just one of many for them, So if you're not staying on top of it, the chances of them staying on top of it are lower.
It's a business that's really built for scale. And that's the reason why so much management doesn't work, is because to be great at it and make sure everyone's listing is still great, you really do have to be you have to be able to say no to a lot of customers. Your box, like I can imagine what a really good STR management company would look like. It would be like this guy or gal who's got a bunch in that area, and they already have a full-time cleaner, not contracted. They already know the market. They already know the design. They already know where to buy all the stuff. They already know where to get the discounted appliances. They know how to get all that stuff, and they kind of they look at your product and they go, this is what you need to do, no question.
Yeah.
They make sure it's perfect. They got the punch list. And then once they plug it into the system, same cleaners, same scheduling, same market trends, same adjusting, and it kind of just plug and play. But you need to scale. But like if someone said, help me manage mine, I would say, if it's not like within 5 blocks, something I already have, then I don't know if I'd be that successful. And even then, I still have a lot more to learn on mine. But I would at least be able to lean back on people I already work with. But I still would be nervous if I'm relying too heavily on contracted people. I could tell there's going to be a point where we'll probably have enough of them in the same general region that we'll probably eventually get a full-time cleaner.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
And when that happens, scaling, whether it be managing other people's or arbitrage or acquiring more, whatever. The first two sound horrible to me, by the way. I'm not a big fan of, I think that I would just probably acquire more. But that option will become more realistic at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the other thing too that we didn't talk about that I just thought of that also did work into my math. There probably is going to be another dip at some point in time. Interest rates will change at some point in time. Something will happen because I can tell you, just in me watching, like I told you this, I think last week or whenever we met the last time, I talked to the realtor that I was working with down there, and I was like, man, these properties have been on for a long time. And he's like, yeah, the average property here is 90 days. Like people are reducing prices there. It's not like it's super hot. It's
Right.
not like frothy market,
Right.
where things are just moving, and there are people I think have expectations that are not meeting reality in some ways. So, I mean, and who knows? There could be a time when the price is right.
Here's what's happening. This is actually an interesting conversation to have. Here's what's happening. Values aren't changing a lot, and it feels if you look at a graph, it looks very undramatic because it goes from like big spike, big drop, and now it's very flat. But that flat is not lack of activity or lack of pressure. It's almost like what I compare the market to right now? Two really strong tug of war teams.
Yeah, right.
Which means it could, if something happens, it can break one way or the other.
Yeah.
There's tons of pressure to push, but the good news is that the interest rate one never can hold that long. If values crash heavily, it's because the rate markets were pushed too hard, too high, too long. And if that happens, they'll cave if they do it too hard. The other pressure is demand, which also has to do with lack of inventory.
Yep.
And so, but it really is a tug of war.
Yeah, but see, like in Phoenix, the problem, it's not a problem. But when it comes to inventory, it's not here. The inventory problems here are you're
Geographic.
bounded. Yes, you're bounded by mountains and water and
They're
space.
limited by like water.
No, they're bounded by nothing. They just keep growing out. They just keep expanding.
The thing that the only thing that's keeping them from growing faster is they have to keep creating and engineering irrigation systems to keep having potable water to be expanded.
Yeah.
That's it.
So
there's unlimited land.
Yeah. So you have all these. You constantly have things popping up, and there are just multiple opportunities there.
I've always been nervous. I mean, I always felt like Florida had, they always said the three states that were hit the hardest in the Great Recession were Nevada, Arizona, and Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt like Florida was the safer of the three because it had some of the same geographical limitations that we have. However, they have geographical issues that we don't have, like rising tide waters.
Right. It's hard to insure your property there now. It's almost impossible to get
Mm-hmm.
insurance down there, I think, now.
And so the hurricanes and the rising sea levels are creating, or actually reducing land, but it's creating a different kind of problem. But I've always been a little nervous about Nevada and Arizona because of that. Now, at the same time, there's certain realities that can't be recreated, right? At the end of the day, we've already seen things spread out from Phoenix, small towns like Tucson and Gilbert, Arizona, and so forth, right? And at the end of the day, they have ran out of land in the center. And so I do believe, but the problem is that you can get to the center pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So it has to be really special. And
Correct.
That's where like the only thing, and I'm not a local expert to those markets, so I can't speak to it. But like when I look at those three states, the only area I can say like for sure it would be smart to own real estate there is the Las Vegas Strip. Because it's like there's nowhere else like it in Nevada. And you could try to go like one block off the Strip.
Yeah.
And look how close it is, and we're like, it ain't the same, right. And it's so obvious, right? And of course, I'm never going to own anything over there, anyways.
I mean, in Phoenix, Scottsdale is sort of that way, only because if you go to Scottsdale, you're like, okay, like this is different, like it's unique in its own, it's got its own vibe. It's like, you know what I'm saying, like it's it's different enough that it's, I think will probably always be appealing, but otherwise.
But the discount of moving your money from Washington to Arizona has been reduced heavily. They've closed the gap.
Yes. Well, COVID, I think, closed the gap kind of on everything.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's still. I mean, you can still get a pretty. I think everyone's expectations for price are not meeting reality in some ways. Like. We were walking, like, I can't tell you, I think we went and looked at like 5, 6, 7 properties while we were down there.
Mm-hmm.
And basically every time we walked in, there was this, agent that was helping us tour or whatever. And she was like, I looked at the comps and they're like pretty close. And I would just look at her and I would say, like, you can list your property for whatever you want, but that doesn't mean you're in the ballpark of what somebody's going to buy this thing for.
Mm-hmm.
Because I walked into some and I was like, there's no way. Like some of the properties were like overbuilt for the neighborhood, or they were just
Right.
not as appealing as they spent their money in the wrong places. I thought like there was these, we went into this one neighborhood and it was they're like kind of like old craftsman houses, but
Okay.
like in a good way,
Right.
like charming. And they basically just like built this front facade that makes it all look super modern. And I was like, you're just losing the whole character of the neighborhood by doing that. And you'd think it will help you like increase the price point, but in reality, it kind of takes away because it's like those like and I know I am mixing all of my styles here, but like those mid-century modern houses like in Palm Springs,
Mm-hmm.
with their flat, there's like glass and it's like all kind of, when you go in there and you're like, okay, this is kind of cool, like
Right.
in an old school kind of way. That's what these were like, and they just like threw that out. I'm like, yeah, it's not gonna work,
Yeah.
But there are like all these different factors. Where I was just like, well, I can't buy any of these houses right now. None of them are good enough. So
I felt like it was a little bit like a residential purchase when you're talking about doing it, and I think that you're realizing that's what it would be if you did, and that's not you.
no, I mean, I was just hoping to find something that
Well,
checked the boxes.
Well, sure. You came into it with the right mindset, but if you actually did pull the trigger, it would be a residential purchase because of the way the market is right now.
Correct.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I didn't want to have to pay. I didn't want to have to pay out of pocket. That
Now you know why I talk about buying the properties with the hacks and the burfers because what if you think about it, it makes what you just said makes regular transactions not really palatable. So, but there are unique properties that have this value upside that get overlooked. And if that same pressure you're talking about puts pressure on those owners to sell, and most people can't see that value upside, it gives you a chance to acquire. I mean, that's really the story of my 2020,
yeah,
right? COVID, and then the West Seattle Bridge went down, and then I bought $3 million worth of real estate within 90 days of each other,
yeah,
right? Which today is worth $6 million, right? Doubled its value, and it didn't go up 100% in value. It was because I was able to push up the value 30 to 50% within a couple of months of owning it. And then the rest of it was the market and plus some improvements I did, right? And so, people could look at what I was doing back then and say, you're crazy. Like, there's so many other markets that don't have transportation issues like West Seattle has. I'm like, I know, but this area is filled with these value-add properties that no one else is noticing. And these owners sit on these things in their family for like 25, 50, 75 years.
Yeah.
Getting them to shake them loose is not an easy task. And so I'm using the market conditions to shake them loose. Then I can do my value add, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's it's a different kind of market right now with the high rates, but I think very much it's the same thing.
Yep.
That if you're not buying something that just screams that it makes sense, then don't bother doing it.
Yeah. Here's another thing that I consider doing too, and what I mean is just being on the lookout for while I'm probably doing this other stuff on the side, is just looking in the market for a property that I could long-term rent. But that's like maybe in a great neighborhood or is cool that in a few years I could just, let them pay, sort of zero it out in a way, be in a cool spot. And then when I'm ready, come in and do some shit and then
Totally.
And then do it a different way like that.
The thing is that where that makes sense in a high rate market is an area that has aspects of what you're talking about, but the price points are still lower.
Yeah.
Because
right.
That's where the
you
high
have to find
rates,
a deal though in the area.
That's where the high rates really kills the margin of your cash flow
Yep.
deals is the high price point markets.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to make them work in high price point markets unless there's a deleveraging aspect in the game plan.
Yep.
Yeah. And so.
Yeah, because like that, man, I like that. I really do like that one that had the unit on top.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is it's not a problem, but they bought it, they fully rehabbed it. Now they want to get their money out,
Right.
But man, it's just expensive
Mm-hmm.
for what it's not unrealistic what they're asking for, but it's unrealistic at the same time.
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
It's not unrealistic based off what it is and where it is and what it looks like, but it's unrealistic for most people to make it palatable, especially as a vacation home.
Yeah, they just missed. I just feel like there's a lot of, I guess I'm not in this industry, you know, but it seems like there's probably a lot of people out there that are trying to like fix and flip, and they're just not doing it right.
Look, there's different there's different ways to evaluate a real estate market. And I've always said this, and now it's becoming more true than ever. There are demands for areas based off like tourism, but they're more flaky, right? The areas that are more solid are based off of just the inventory, the supply and demand is how many homes are for sale, how much land can you develop is your supply. Those two represent your supply chain, right? So there's resales, new construction in that area. So how many homes typically sell and resell, and how many new construction coming online, mixed with jobs is your demand. Jobs being how many jobs are there, how many new jobs are being created, and what's the median income of those jobs. So that local economy of jobs and average income, where are those going? Average amount of homes for sale each month is resales, how much new construction is coming on board, including how much land is to develop. And then you kind of take those four factors. Those four factors are really just, each are two sub-factors of two main categories, supply and demand, right? And then you evaluate your market based off of that. Because you can say, like, you could make that comment of, like, I just don't think it really makes sense. Well, I'm working on a backyard cottage project in Kirkland, right? And I just was talking to a builder today about buying the project for me. Why does it still make sense to do that? I bought it at the top of the market because there's no fucking land in Kirkland.
Right.
And even though they created this mid-housing code, they're not filled with a bunch of alleys like Seattle. So finding projects that actually work are hard.
Yeah.
And when he builds this 1,500 square foot backyard cottage I just got permits for, every comp supports $1.15 to $1.3 million. And he knows he can build it for fractions of that cost. And there's your margin.
Yes.
And the reason why that pencils is because there's no land. And then you say, okay, well, what about the jobs? Google, Microsoft, Amazon, right? And then what do they get paid? Even with the pay cuts they've taken, they easily can still afford that.
For sure.
And that's the basic principle of understanding a good real estate market is the supply-demand part, which is the jobs, the income, and then the resales plus the land. Those four are the core fundamentals of evaluating real estate market. And that's why whenever it says invest in an area, my first reaction is, where are people going to work there?
Right.
What do they make? Are there going to be new jobs? That's why Tim's philosophy on the cash flow part makes sense, is because there's not a lot of growth in those areas, but there's a lot of stability.
Correct.
Right? And that's why those markets I call like the bond market of real estate.
Yeah.
You're going to get solid cash-on-cash returns, high cap rates,
right.
Not a lot of growth, but if you want to get a lot of cash flow, it makes sense, right? And so,
I mean, you can still depreciate a little bit. Like there's some other things you can do that are fine.
Right.
And it's low price points, right? So it's like you don't have to put a lot in,
right,
to sort of, have something going on.
I'm excited. You guys keep doing your houses and duplexes there. I'm excited to revisit those markets in 10 years and buy entire complexes.
Yeah.
Take one house I have in West Seattle and go buy a 20 unit in that area.
Yeah.
That might end up having 1,000 units
in
a market like that, and have 200,000-300,000 in cash flow trading into a market like that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why I like the value then cash flow model.
Yeah.
It's maybe more complex for most people want to deal with, but it definitely makes you richer.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. It goes faster, but you got to put more work in.
You do have to put more work in.
Yeah. So
but what's work?
Well, I'm putting more work in, just a different place.
When after I put that work in, I'll put my work in and learn how to play golf.
That's fine. That's fine. That's good. That's good. We can.
I told John, like, I'm committed. It'll happen. It's not going to happen for a little while.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Just get a little.
I can't have 3 of my best friends fucking going on golfing trips without me. It's fucking horse shit, guys. I'm going to learn, but I want a 6-figure cash flow first.
By the way, you don't have to be great to go on the trips. You just got to be serviceable.
The first time he took me fucking Topgolf on his bachelor party, I couldn't even hit the ball.
Well, it takes a little practice.
You know how embarrassing that is? That's like, you know what that's like? Saying like, hey, me and a bunch, and you don't have to play great, just come play with us. And to whiff at the ball, it's like, why don't we just go to the bathroom at the same time, guys? And then I'll go pee sitting down while we're at it.
Yeah, well, it's a skill. It takes a little practice.
Yeah, at least be able to piss standing up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go play golf.
Yes.
I need the pee standing up version.
Yes,
of golf first.
Agree. You got to be able to get around.
Yeah,
that's true.
The version you saw me playing Topgolf took some real effort to get to that level, which is hilarious because it's not good at all. But at least I'm not whiffing.
Well, it just takes. Yeah, it's harder than it looks. By the way, you're like, oh, this ball is stationary on the ground. It's harder than it looks.
It is not. I never thought it was going to be easy, but it definitely is. It's the thing that really stands out to me about golf is how unnatural the feel is.
Yeah.
I think that when someone got me to shoot the basketball correctly, I was like, oh, that makes sense. This feels good. Right. Oh, the ball has this kind of it flies out, or the first time you threw a football correctly with a tight spiral, wow, I can really throw it far. Look at how much velocity I got just from technique.
Yeah.
So you kind of work on this technique, and when you get it down, it feels right. Golf, the way the ball flies might look right, but the way it feels up to the point it hits feels all wrong.
Yeah.
It does not feel natural for the human body to do a golf swing.
No, it takes a lot of practice, for sure.
For you guys, you probably got to a point where it feels right just because of how your practice feels.
Yeah.
But if you just said, take the stick and swing it, it does not, what you're going to do will not be anything close to a proper golf swing.
No. And by the way, I still go out some days and it doesn't feel good at all.
Right.
And I'm terrible.
I mean, in retrospect, throwing a football, it's not natural. Like throwing a baseball, you can do it pretty natural. I feel like you throw a rock, you know how to throw a baseball, and then you just work on getting your technique down a little bit. Throwing a football is a little awkward, but it's like moving your mechanics around a little bit, so that way this ball that doesn't feel the same as a round small ball has this kind of. It's still once you get some parts of it down, it feels right when you throw it. Like, ooh, that felt good, and then it looked good coming out. Right. You're swinging at a golf ball. It was the only thing that's ever satisfying is the sound and the flight. The feel of it is just very unnatural.
Yeah. If you hit one good, though, it feels good. I will say that.
The sound.
It all feels good. If you hit one good, it's just like slicing through warm butter. It feels great. Yep. So, all right. So
I've yet to know what that feels like.
It feels awesome. Once you do it once, then you're like, okay, I want to do that again. I want to do that again.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's wrap it up, I guess. That was that's the my real estate journey up to date.
Oh, by the way, the ring on your finger.
Yeah.
Is there anything special about that ring?
Nope.
Just a gold ring.
It's just the Ridge wallet.
Yeah.
It's just a Ridge. It's just from Ridge. They give you one of these and they give you a silicone one at the same time.
Okay.
So nope, there's nothing special about it. It's not.
I thought you might do an Aura ring there.
No, I mean.
No electronic devices on the wedding ring.
The problem is I won't look at the numbers, man. I won't look at the numbers, if I'm being honest with myself, because I know how I sleep. I sleep great. I don't have a problem sleeping.
I think that's the key. I knew I slept like shit, so the ring was game changing for me because I needed to see how, when it was really bad, I couldn't tell how bad it was.
Yeah.
A really bad night versus a semi-bad night. At the moment I woke up, felt the same. And I just knew that long-term for my health, that wasn't okay to operate that way.
Right.
So it's okay, now if I know it's total shit and I have some extra time that day, force myself to take a nap.
Yeah.
And then get that score up a little bit.
Man, if I took a nap, I would crush life. Everybody should really carve out. You don't even actually, and many times you don't actually even need to literally fall all the way asleep. If you just turn the lights out, lay down on your couch, set the timer for 15 minutes and close your eyes so the timer gets you back up, that has a big effect too.
Because even if you don't fall asleep, it's basically a form of meditation.
You're still just slowing down and because you don't want to oversleep in the middle of the day either, but anyway.
What I did notice is when my sleep score is really high is when I feel really groggy.
Yep. I have to wake. I don't like to sleep. I don't like to sleep until I wake up naturally because I feel that way too.
Yeah.
I wake up early and go to the gym most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. So that's the only way I do it. But yeah. All right. Well, that was fun.
Yeah. So no more Arizona home.
Well, I mean, I think I may
for now.
I think I may look in the way that what I may do is adjust what I'm looking for,
right,
in case some diamond in the rough does come up that I can buy and rent long term, because I think it would be cool to have a place there, over time. And if the area just keeps building up around it, if you get it in the right spot, even if it's an ugly house, we can make it pretty.
Ugly houses and remodeling them is the simplest and most natural value add you can do.
Yeah.
That's literally who I was talking to before he came in here. A guy who wants to do basically a version of a BRRRR, not 100% BRRRR, but just reduced down payment, cash flow positive in a high rate market. And it was just a, regular rent in that area was like 2,700. Airbnb rent was like, 6,500 a month,
Yeah.
And so, even with high rates, you can make it work.
Yeah.
So, that's cool.
Yeah, because if you can find a place in a desirable neighborhood, where people want to be, but the house isn't awesome, you can still rent it, and get decent rents probably.
Yeah.
I haven't even looked at the rental market. It's probably also the same, hard to cash, hard to make the numbers work just because of where everything's at. But,
the next,
if you're patient, you're fine.
Our next episode, I'll get some different guests and we'll see if we can talk about how to find a good Airbnb market in today's market.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are great ones. There are good ones. You could do it in Phoenix too, but again, like you're talking about too, you do want to be able to find a
There's these
home
obscure
with some
ones.
character, like with some.
The problem with we'll save it for the next show, but the problem with the really good Airbnb markets is they're so not obvious.
Yeah.
You look at the area and you're like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
And then you look and you're like, whoa. And then you start to reverse dissect why, and then it starts to make sense.
Yeah.
And it's like an untapped market, and then how do you corner it and not let it get oversaturated after time?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right, let's wrap it up. I never did mention, but if you like the show, hit the like button, or if you have a question, ask us, or I don't know, just keep listening. That's great too. But as always, I am Chris.
I'm Keen.
And this is the Business Barbershop Podcast. See ya.
See you guys later.